There's one thing almost no man does, and yet when it happens, it completely transforms how a woman perceives him. The strangest thing is, it's probably not what you're imagining. It has nothing to do with money, physical appearance, or even confidence, at least not as most understand it. It's something much quieter, much more subtle, and if you never grasp it, you could spend years feeling like something's missing without knowing exactly what it is. Most men go through life convinced that attraction is a formula, a set of boxes to check, a list of qualities to display. They believe that if they just earn enough, look good enough, or project enough confidence, they will finally be enough. But the truth is far simpler and far more elusive. It's not about what you have. It's about who you are when the world goes quiet. It's about what happens in the spaces between words, in the moments when there's nothing to prove and nowhere to go. If you truly want to understand this, stick with me until the end. And if these kinds of conversations help you see things more clearly, please consider subscribing. Not for me, but for the person you're working to become. Because this isn't about impressing anyone. It's about becoming someone worth knowing. Most men grew up believing something very specific, that they must impress, solve problems, protect those around them, and constantly prove their worth. And while all those qualities are important, there's a blind spot that very few have learned to identify. That blind spot is entirely related to emotional presence. It's not just about what you do, but how you make the other person feel while they're sharing a moment with you. Think about it honestly. When you're talking to a woman you truly care about, are you really listening to her? Or are you just waiting for the right moment to respond? Are you trying to understand what she's going through? Or are you focused solely on finding the perfect words? Because there's a huge difference between hearing what someone says and understanding what's really behind those words. Most men are trained from childhood to be problem solvers. When someone presents a difficulty, their instinct is to fix it. But this instinct, while well-intentioned, can be deeply counterproductive in intimate relationships. A woman rarely needs you to solve her problems. She needs you to witness her struggle, to sit with her in the discomfort, and to let her know that she is not alone. This is the essence of emotional presence, and it's something that cannot be faked or manufactured. From a psychological perspective, many women are extremely sensitive to emotional cues that aren't always obvious. They aren't looking for perfection, nor do they expect you to always have the right answer. But they do notice when someone is genuinely present, and they also notice when someone is putting on an act. This is where most men stumble, not because they're bad people, but because they were never taught to slow down. They were never taught to slow down, to be comfortable with silences instead of rushing to fill them, to allow a conversation to unfold naturally instead of treating it like a task that must be executed perfectly. When a man becomes obsessed with the idea of having to do it right, he often loses what truly matters, a genuine connection. And here lies the great irony. The more you try to impress, the further you move away from what truly creates emotional attraction. Connection isn't born from visible effort, but from the authenticity that the other person can perceive and feel. And that requires something that many find uncomfortable: controlled emotional vulnerability. This doesn't mean sharing absolutely everything or exposing every detail of your life without any limits. It means being connected enough to yourself not to feel the need to hide behind a mask of constant control. Because when a woman feels she can relax emotionally with you, when she doesn't need to constantly question who you really are, when that continuous pressure to impress or please disappears, something profoundly changes in the way she perceives you. She feels safe, not in the physical sense, but in the psychological sense. And psychological safety is one of the strongest pillars upon which lasting attraction is built. But there's a truth that very few people explain clearly. That kind of confidence can't be faked. It's built from the relationship you have with yourself. If you're constantly seeking approval, if your self-esteem depends on external validation, if your fear of rejection is so great that you start changing who you are, all of that will eventually manifest, not necessarily through your words, but in the way you say them, in your pauses, in your tone, and in the overall energy you project. It's a fascinating thing to observe once you know what to look for. A man who is comfortable in his own skin doesn't need to tell you he's confident. You can feel it in his stillness, in his ability to hold eye contact without aggression, in his willingness to let a moment breathe. Conversely, a man who is desperately trying to prove himself will fill every silence with nervous chatter, will overcompensate with forced laughter, will steer conversations back to his own achievements. And women, who are often socialized to be highly attuned to these subtle cues, can sense the difference instantly. That's why, before asking yourself, what do women want, perhaps there's a much more useful question. Am I truly present when I'm with someone, or am I just putting on a performance of myself that I hope will be enough? Because that quality that 99% of men overlook isn't a technique, it's not a trick, it's a way of being in the world. And once you begin to understand that, everything else starts to fall into place, not in a forced or rehearsed way, but in a completely natural way. The Stoic philosophers understood this deeply. They spoke of the importance of living in accordance with nature, of being true to oneself, of not allowing external circumstances to dictate internal peace. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This is the foundation of true presence. When you are no longer a slave to your own insecurities, when you no longer need the world to validate you, you become free. And that freedom is magnetic. It's not that you become aloof or distant. It's that you become real. And there is nothing more attractive than someone who is fully, unapologetically, and peacefully themselves. So if you want to stand out from the 99% of men who never learn this lesson, start by looking inward. Ask yourself what you are running from when you fill every silence. Ask yourself what you are afraid of when you try to control every conversation. And then, slowly, begin to let go. Not because someone told you to, but because you realize that the person you are trying to impress has been you all along. And when you finally stop performing, when you finally stop trying to be enough, you will discover that you always were. And that realization, more than any technique or strategy, is what will transform how women perceive you, not because you changed anything about yourself, but because you finally stopped hiding who you truly are.